I became an entrepreneur at the age of 9 out of necessity. I grew up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in San Francisco. It was called the Western Addition, and looked more like a war zone. Nearly 100 blocks were emptied out by redevelopment. I became an entrepreneur to support my mother, an immigrant with few job options, and I wanted to join my neighborhood baseball team. But you needed a glove, and my mother wasn't having any of that, so I decided to get the glove myself. I went door to door asking for 25 cents. Now, most people rejected me, but enough did contribute for me to reach $7, the amount I needed. Well, 2 years later, I was selling baseball gloves to the neighborhood kids. The gloves were, well, from suspicious sources, but I was making money, and boy, did I learn a lot about life. The first lesson was that selling baseball gloves wasn't about selling baseball gloves. It was about being an expert in your field. People pay you for your expertise and how you make them feel. It was about selling the ability to fulfill a dream. How many of you still treasure something that made you feel special? Fast forward 13 years later, and I had just graduated from college. I was working full-time but starting a business on the side. It was the first of my legitimate businesses. Over the next 40 years, I launched 9 other businesses and 9 nonprofits. My businesses generated hundreds of millions in revenue, millions in taxes, and created hundreds of jobs. But it was extremely tough. Several of my startups required me to work 7 days a week, 12-hour days for 2 years. What I was missing was the knowledge of running a successful business. Yes, there was an SBA and an SBDC, but like many entrepreneurs, those were not top of mind because we don't have a culture of entrepreneurship. Most of us come from a culture of employment. So through my 5 decades as an entrepreneur, there's one big thing I've come to realize. But first, let me give you some important data that comes from the Gallup organization, the Kauffman Foundation, and the U.S. Bureau of Statistics. Number 1, the United States ranks only 11th in business startups, behind all the countries with higher growth than our country. These include Denmark, New Zealand, Sweden, Finland, and Hungary. Number 2, self-employment in the United States is the fastest growing group of workers. It's estimated that 40% of our working population will be self-employed by 2020, and that's a conservative number. Number 3, 100% of all new net jobs are coming from startups from 1 to 19 employees, while large corporations continue to eliminate nearly 1 million jobs per year. And number 4, nearly 500,000 new companies are started each year, while over 400,000 go under. Statistically, this means that 60% of all startups fail within 3 years. Here's the flip side to that. When business startups are supported through an organized method, 89% of them reach the all-important 5-year benchmark when most businesses establish a steady clientele and steady profitability. That's a 150% turnaround. Another issue worth noting is that we tend to place entrepreneurship on one side and job development on the other. So as Ronald Reagan once said in Berlin, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," which then ended the Cold War. Can we do the same in how we view entrepreneurship as one side and job development on the other? Jobs are created by entrepreneurs. They go together like peanut butter and jelly. So here's the one big thing I want you to remember, even if nothing else sticks. Entrepreneurship generates huge revenues for a city, and it can generate even more if we plan for it. Envision a building filled with entrepreneurs. They're in business incubators, open workspaces, classrooms, meeting rooms, a cafe. They're working with advisors. It's a beehive of activities. Now envision this building as publicly funded with every expectation that it will serve as a catalyst for growing our economies, that it will increase revenues and ignite new jobs and more streams of income. It's happening in pockets now despite inadequate public funding. If our small businesses are the biggest creators of revenue and jobs, think what adequate public funding would do. I'm not saying it's just about entrepreneurs. No, far from it. We need to think holistically. Call it an economic ecosystem. We need accessible innovation labs to incite startups, entrepreneurial support systems, greater skills training for our future workers, and community policymakers who ask the question, how do we make this work? Envision that one day in the near future we have entrepreneurship centers in every city, just as we have police and fire departments for safety, parks for recreation, public schools for education. Why not entrepreneurship centers as revenue catalysts for our cities? Today, I still think back to my youth. about the inequities in our society and how we can use entrepreneurship to turn things around. So let me give you this final story to explain why I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship answering many of our social and economic challenges. One night, as I was running a deal, I was shot in the head and left to die. I lost an eye, but as you can see, I'm still alive. All I was doing was trying to help my mother make ends meet. I hope each of you will take the one idea to have publicly supported entrepreneurship centers in every city as a necessary component of a healthy economic ecosystem for all. This is a dialogue we need to begin.